Hello, my beloved family. A very warm welcome to each and every one of you. I'm your storyteller, James, and I truly hope this message finds you all in the best of health and spirits. My loyal family, it's always such a pleasure to have you here with me. May your days be filled with peace, love, and endless blessings. May happiness surround you, and may you find success in all that you pursue. You are always in my thoughts, and I wish nothing but the best for you. Today, my family, we are diving into a story filled with twists, passion, and suspense. I don't want to give too much away, but trust me when I say that this one will keep you on the edge of your seat. There are moments of beauty, moments of tension, and moments that will have you wondering what's going to happen next. You'll want to stay till the very end to uncover all the secrets. This one's a ride you don't want to miss, so make sure you're ready for the adventure. Before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a moment of this incredible journey we're on together. And of course, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. I can't wait to hear where you all are tuning in from. So with all that said, my wonderful family, let's dive into the story. And trust me, you'll want to be here till the very last word. Let's begin. Adele had always dreamed of a life where love would bloom naturally, where she would meet someone who adored her for who she was, someone who would look into her eyes and see the depths of her soul, someone who would hold her close and whisper words of devotion into her ears under the silver glow of the moon. But fate had a different plan, a cruel twist that would strip her of the fantasy she had carefully woven in her heart since childhood. She had always known she was different, always reminded that she was not truly a Vaughn, not truly their blood, not truly their own. The Vaughns had adopted her when she was just a baby, taking her in out of charity or perhaps obligation, but never once had they let her forget that she was not theirs by birth. Though she grew up in a lavish home filled with expensive chandeliers, velvet drapes, and golden cutlery, she had never truly belonged, never truly felt the warmth of unconditional love. The Vaughns were a prestigious family known for their wealth and influence, yet despite being given the best clothes, the finest education, and access to a world many could only dream of, Adele always felt like an outsider, a mere guest in a house that would never truly be hers. And now, as she stood before the grand doors of the Vaughn estate, hands trembling, heart pounding in her chest, she realized that her fate had been sealed. Her dreams of love, passion, and companionship had been shattered, replaced by the cruel reality that she was nothing more than a pawn in their game, a piece to be moved and sacrificed for their own interests. Her adoptive parents had arranged her marriage not out of love, not out of concern for her happiness, but for their own selfish reasons. They had chosen a man, a simple farmer named Cairo, and declared that she was to be his wife. It was not a request, not a suggestion, but a demand, an order she had no choice but to obey. She had protested, pleaded, tried to reason with them, but her words had fallen on deaf ears. "You should be grateful, Adele," her adoptive mother had said, her tone laced with indifference. "A woman like you should be thankful that someone is even willing to take you as a wife." The command sliced through the darkness, and the intruders faltered, their attention snapping toward the silhouette that emerged from the shadows behind Adele. It was Cairo. He moved with the confidence of a man who had nothing to prove, but would destroy anyone who dared threaten what was his. The low firelight from the nearby cottage caught the edge of his face as he stepped closer, his jaw tight, his eyes sharper than she'd ever seen them. Adele had never heard him speak with such force. There was no hesitation in his voice, no room for argument, only the promise of what would happen if they took one more step. The strangers exchanged glances, clearly weighing their chances. But something in Cairo's stance, the way his hands were clenched, his feet grounded like a tree ready to root into battle, told them they wouldn't win. Not tonight. After a moment of tense silence, the men muttered something under their breath and turned, vanishing back into the tall grass and the shadows from where they came. Only when they were truly gone did Cairo approach her. "Adele," he said softly, his tone now stripped of its edge. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, her voice caught in her throat as the adrenaline pulsed through her limbs. No, I, I'm fine. Without another word, Cairo stepped forward and did something he had never done before. Not even when she had wept alone after their first awkward days together, not even when she had fallen ill weeks ago. He reached for her and wrapped his arms around her shoulders, pulling her into a firm, steady embrace. Adele didn't move at first. She was too stunned, her heart pounding not just from fear anymore, but from something deeper, warmer. She felt his heartbeat, steady and calm against her cheek. His arms, usually so reserved in their strength, held her as if she were something precious. And in that moment, something inside her cracked open, a dam she hadn't even realized she'd built. I thought, she began, then stopped. Her voice trembled too much to go on. I know, he murmured, his lips near her temple. I should have never let you walk alone. Not this late. It wasn't guilt in his voice, it was responsibility. And more than that, it was care. They stood like that for a long time under the stars, neither of them speaking, but both of them understanding something had shifted. He didn't let go until she did, and even then, his hand lingered at the small of her back, guiding her gently as they made their way home through the quiet fields, the moonlight watching silently overhead. That night, as Adele lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. Not because of the fear, but because of the way he had held her, because of the fire in his voice when he spoke, because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't falling into love with a stranger. Maybe she was falling into love with her husband, a arranged, cold version she had accepted as her fate, and now, without warning, without planning, it was happening. Real love was unfolding before her in the quiet corners of their simple life, in the garden he planted just for her, in the way he stayed up all night when she was sick, and in the silence that wrapped around them like a soft blanket, where nothing needed to be said to be understood. She began to crave his presence, not out of obligation, but out of a desire she hadn't known she could feel for him. It was in the way her heart skipped a beat when she heard his footsteps outside, the way her breath caught when their hands brushed. She caught herself watching him too, the way he carried himself with quiet strength, the way his brow furrowed slightly in concentration when he worked with his hands, and most of all, the way his eyes softened every time they met hers. It wasn't dramatic, this love. It wasn't all-consuming or fiery. It was steady, gentle, like rain soaking slowly into the earth, giving life where none had flourished before. And that was what startled Adele the most. How safe it felt. How right. Like she had finally come home to a place she never knew she belonged. Cairo, for his part, continued to show his love the only way he knew how. Through action. Through quiet presence. Through consistency. He didn't shower her with poetry or promises. He simply showed up day after day and loved her with every small thing he did. And for Adele, that was worth more than all the words in the world. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft with lavender light, Cairo found her standing in the rose garden, her fingers grazing the petals of a pale pink bloom. He approached slowly, not wanting to disturb the moment, but unable to stay away. "You like them?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual, as if the moment was too sacred to be broken by sound. She turned to him, eyes shining not just with tears but with something brighter, something warmer. "I love them," she whispered, and though she didn't say it, the way she looked at him said everything. Cairo stepped closer, close enough to see the way her breath hitched, close enough to feel the heat radiating between them. "I planted them for you," he said almost shyly. "I know." He reached out then, slowly, as though giving her time to retreat if she needed to. But she didn't move. She stood still, waiting, wanting. His hand brushed her cheek, his thumb tracing the soft curve of her jaw. "I don't know how to say it right," he admitted, voice low and rough with emotion. "But I think I'm falling in love with you." Adele's heart thundered in her chest, not with fear, but with joy. With the shocking, terrifying, wonderful realization that she felt the same. "You don't have to say it right," she whispered, her hand coming up to rest over his. "You're already showing me, and that's more than enough." And in that quiet, fragrant garden, surrounded by the blooms he had planted for her, the two of them stood in the golden hush of evening, no longer strangers, no longer forced into a life together, but two souls slowly, beautifully, falling into a love neither of them had expected, but both had always needed. Would you like this next part to transition into a deeper romantic or emotional development between them? Perhaps leading into a first kiss or a heart-to-heart about their past? Would you like the next part to continue from the next morning? But I didn't want someone who already belonged to that world, he continued, his voice low but unwavering. I wanted someone who knew what it meant to be human, to feel pain, to understand loneliness, to crave love not for the sake of appearances, but for the sake of soul. His fingers tightened slightly around hers. You, Adele, you were the only one who looked at me and saw a man. Not a last name, not a bank account, not a business opportunity. Adele blinked, her throat tight, her heart thudding so loudly she could barely hear over it. She had so many questions, and yet one truth rose above them all, clear as sunlight breaking through morning fog. Cairo had never needed to impress her. He had only ever needed to be real, and he had been, entirely, just not in the way she had expected. But you still didn't tell me, she whispered, not accusing, not angry, but hurt. You let me believe something that wasn't true. I let you believe what you needed to believe until you were ready to see the truth, he said gently. I wasn't hiding from you, Adele. I was protecting something fragile, something I've never had before, a chance at real love. I didn't want to risk it by letting the noise of my world drown it out. His words broke something in her, not in a painful way, but in a way that allowed the walls around her own heart to crumble. She realized then that love wasn't always about full disclosure and perfect timing. Sometimes love was about patience, about trust that built itself like bricks over time. He had trusted her with his most vulnerable self, and now finally he was offering her the rest. But why me? She asked again, her voice small, filled with wonder. Why choose me, Cairo, when you could have had anyone? Because when I saw you, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, I saw a girl who wasn't trying to impress anyone. I saw strength in your silence, fire behind your calm. You had everything the world had taken from me, humility, honesty, innocence. And I knew that if I was ever going to find peace, it would be with someone like you, someone real. Tears gathered in Adele's eyes, not because she was sad, but because her heart was too full to hold everything she was feeling. Cairo, this man she had once thought was quiet and simple, was anything but. He was layered, complex, gentle, yet powerful. He was a man who had hidden his wealth not to deceive, but to protect the one thing he couldn't buy: love. And now, standing before him, Adele didn't feel betrayed. She felt chosen. She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper as she looked up at him. I don't care about the money, Cairo. I care that you held my hand when I was sick, that you made soup when I couldn't move, that you walked beside me like it was the only place you wanted to be. That's the man I fell in love with, not the CEO. Cairo exhaled, visibly shaken by her words, and something deep in his chest seemed to relax, like he had been holding his breath this whole time. Neither of them needed to say, I love you. The words had already filled the room, echoed in every silence, whispered in every sacrifice. But still he leaned down, his forehead resting gently against hers, and said it anyway. I love you, Adele. And for the first time she smiled with tears in her eyes and whispered, I love you too. The truth was no longer a weight between them. It had become a bridge. And across it, hand in hand, they stepped into a future they had never planned, but one they had quietly, beautifully, begun to build all along. Adele felt her heart tighten at his words, a mix of emotions flooding her chest with such sudden intensity it felt like her lungs had forgotten how to breathe. Her knees felt weak, her mind tumbling through shock and disbelief as Cairo's confession continued to echo in her ears. She didn't know whether to be angry at the deception, to feel hurt at being chosen for reasons she hadn't suspected, or to feel grateful that, despite everything, there was something pure in the way he saw her. For what felt like the first time in their entire relationship, she saw him clearly. Not the reserved man cloaked in quiet mystery, not the one who blended into the simplicity of their countryside life, but a man who had made a choice, a man who had chosen her. Not because she was simple or unassuming, not because she came from a world removed from his empire of glass towers and boardrooms, but because he believed she could love him for who he was when all the masks were gone. Her fingers clenched at her sides, nails digging into her palms as she tried to ground herself in the reality unraveling around her. The Cairo she thought she knew, and the Cairo who stood before her now. They weren't the same, and yet somehow he still was. The quiet sincerity in his eyes made something deep in her soul pause, made her heart beat slow even as confusion swirled in her chest. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. He wasn't groveling or making excuses. He was giving her a choice to step toward him, to stay, a choice to see him, all of him, and still choose to love him. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. Not for him. And Adele realized with startling clarity, not for her either. The life they had shared, the days filled with quiet mornings and laughter over burned toast, the evenings of shared silence and soft glances, those moments hadn't been a performance. They had been real, and Cairo had been present for every one of them, not as a wealthy CEO pretending to be someone else, but as a man simply wanting to be loved for more than what his bank account could offer. Adele swallowed hard, her emotions tangled in a storm she couldn't yet name. She looked at him, really looked at him, and in his face she saw something raw, something unguarded. There was no trace of the confident tycoon in his posture, only a man laying himself bare, hoping the woman before him might still see him the same. That hope, unspoken but heavy in the air, made something inside her ache. He had always treated her with kindness, even when she'd been stubborn, cold, distant. Even when she hadn't understood him, he had been patient. He had never used his status to control her. He had never pushed. He had listened. He had cared. When she'd fallen sick, he'd been the one by her side through the long nights. When she'd needed silence, he'd held it with her. He had protected her without smothering her, had made her feel like her thoughts, her dreams, her fears mattered, that she mattered. And that had never been a lie. Cairo had loved her quietly, steadily, without the flashiness her world had always taught her was a sign of affection. He had loved her not with roses or grand gestures, but with presence, with warmth, with the way he always made sure she had an extra blanket before bed, or remembered how she liked her tea just a little less sweet than most. He had loved her in the details, and now as she stood in the presence of the truth, she realized something. She had loved him too, not for who he claimed to be, but for who he was. He ached to lavish her with every imaginable gift, each fragment of his heart, each flourish of opulence the world could afford, longing for her to taste life's finest pleasures, glittering jewels, sprawling estates, every extravagance that might whisper to her daily just how treasured she was. As she lay in his arms, her hair splayed across his chest in gentle waves, the steady cadence of her breathing soothed the tumult in his mind until, with a tremulous tenderness, he raised her chin, locking his gaze onto hers with a fervor that bordered on urgency. He needed her to know, beyond all doubt, her significance to him. "I want to give you everything, Adele," he murmured, voice hushed yet heavy with feeling. "Mansions, treasures, whatever your heart desires, it's yours. I'll move heaven and earth to see that smile." His pulse thundered as the words fell from his lips, their gravity tethering him to the moment. Yet her response was a simple curve of her lips, a glow in her eyes that warmed him more than any gem ever could. Reaching up, she cradled his face in a caress that felt almost sacred, tracing the line of his jaw with reverent fingertips. "All I need is you, Cairo," she replied, her tone soft but unwavering. In that instant, every gilded promise and lofty ambition he'd amassed dissolved into insignificance. No palace, no sparkling diamond could rival the depth of their bond. It resided in her laughter after a long day, in the way her hand fitting into his quieted the restless corners of his soul, in every unspoken vow woven through their shared silences. He no longer craved the applause of the world or the fortress of his own invincibility. he had discovered something far more priceless in her steadfast devotion. Drawing her near, he pressed his lips to hers, a kiss soft, yet brimming with all the love he'd held back, vowing in that hushed embrace to spend every breath proving his commitment with deeds of the heart rather than tokens of wealth. Though legally bound by marriage, he yearned to renew his pledge before the eyes of everyone. The grand moment he'd always imagined, framed in light and ceremony. What had begun as a union born of duty and expectation had unfurled into a true partnership of souls. And now, with careful planning and a heart full of hope, he orchestrated a proposal as resplendent as any fairy tale. On the chosen day, amid the hush of anticipation and beneath a canopy of soft luminance, he knelt before her, unveiling a velvet box that held not mere ornament, but a promise of endless devotion. The diamond at its center caught the glow, scattering 1,000 brilliant sparks. Yet to him it symbolized far more than status. It was the emblem of a future they would forge together. His voice, trembling with raw power, carried the confession he'd long withheld. Though we stand here as husband and wife, I wish to declare my love anew. Adele, you are my heart, my compass, my reason to breathe. I vow to cherish you beyond all measure, to stand by you through every storm and every sunrise, giving you not just riches of the earth, but the depths of my soul. As he slid the ring onto her finger, tears shone in her eyes that had first regarded him with wary uncertainty, but now brimmed with unguarded trust and boundless love. When she rose to embrace him, the applause of friends and family faded into the background, for their universe had narrowed to that singular, perfect moment. Their kiss, soft and sure, sealed the truth of their journey. Though challenges had tested them and secrets once threatened to divide them, they emerged united by a love stronger than any luxury, more enduring than the grandest spectacle. In the years that followed, they would dance beneath glittering chandeliers and travel to distant shores, amassing experiences and heirlooms alike. But nothing would ever rival the simple serenity of evenings spent in their countryside haven, where under a tapestry of stars they held hands in silence, hearts beating in time, knowing that their richest possession was the quiet, unwavering connection that had carried them through every trial and would bind them forever. Cairo sat in the opulent silence of his private study, the soft glow of the setting sun streaming through the large windows. His mind was a tangled mess of thoughts, most of them centered on the woman who had irrevocably changed his life, Adele. It had been months since their marriage had shifted from a contractual obligation to a real, profound connection. But even now, Cairo couldn't shake the feeling that there was still so much left unsaid between them. He had built an empire, amassed wealth beyond imagination, and yet in his quietest moments, he felt that none of it mattered without Adele. The luxury, the status, the powerful influence. Those were mere trappings. What truly consumed him was the love he had found in her eyes, in her touch, in the way she made him feel understood without needing words. The memories of their first days together flooded his mind. Back then, it had been about duty, about keeping up appearances for the sake of family and business. Adele had been thrust into this life, pushed into a marriage with a man she barely knew. At first, it had been a delicate dance of misunderstandings, walls carefully constructed by both of them. Cairo had expected a woman who would comply, a wife who would play her part in the grand scheme of things. But Adele was different. She was strong, independent, with a fire that neither his wealth nor his power could control. Over time, however, Cairo had learned what it truly meant to love. It wasn't about grand gestures or buying the finest things for her. It was about the small moments, the way she looked at him in the quiet hours of the morning, the way she made him laugh when the weight of the world was too much to bear. Her love was simple, but it had changed him in ways he could never have imagined. But now he wanted to show her, truly show her, how deeply he felt. It was no longer enough to have her by his side. He wanted to prove to Adele that she was his world, that the love they shared wasn't just some fleeting emotion, but something far deeper, something built on the foundation of trust, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Cairo walked toward the grand fireplace, his fingers lightly brushing the cold marble. He paused for a moment, lost in thought, before turning back to the desk. There on the polished wood lay a small velvet box, a symbol of his love, of his devotion. It was a ring, not just any ring, but one that had taken weeks to design, weeks to get just right. A simple diamond, but it was more than that. It was a promise that he would always cherish her, always protect her, no matter what life threw at them. As he stood there, contemplating the future, the door to his study creaked open. Adele stepped inside, her presence like a breath of fresh air. She was everything to him, and seeing her again, after a long day apart, always left him breathless. She wore a soft smile, her eyes sparkling with a quiet warmth that never failed to make his heart race. "Cairo," she said softly, her voice like music. "Are you ready for dinner?" He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "Actually, I was thinking we could skip dinner tonight." Adele raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "Oh? What do you have in mind?" Cairo's heart pounded in his chest as he walked toward her, taking her hands in his. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "about us, about everything we've been through. And I want you to know, Adele, that you mean more to me than anything else in this world. More than the mansions, more than the wealth, more than all of this." He gestured to the opulence around them. "What matters, what I want to give you, is my heart, my love, my devotion." Adele's eyes softened as she looked at him, her touch gentle as she cupped his face. She didn't say anything at first, simply gazing into his eyes with that deep understanding that always took him by surprise. She knew. She knew everything he needed to say, and yet somehow she never asked for anything more than what he had already given. "I know, Cairo," she whispered, her voice filled with tenderness. "And I feel the same way. You don't have to give me anything more. I have everything I need in you." Cairo's chest tightened with a mixture of love and gratitude. She had chosen him, not out of necessity, but out of love. And that realization, more than any grand gesture or jewel, filled him with the deepest sense of fulfillment. But tonight he wanted to do more. He wanted to give her something tangible, something that symbolized his commitment to her, not just as his wife, but as the love of his life. Without another word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the velvet box. He opened it, revealing the stunning diamond ring inside. The soft glow of the room illuminated its brilliance, casting a warm light on Adele's face. Adele's breath caught in her throat as she looked at the ring. "Cairo?" He dropped to one knee, his gaze never leaving hers. "Adele, I know we're already married, but I want to make this moment ours. I want the world to know just how much you mean to me. You are my heart, my soul, my everything. I vow to love you endlessly, to cherish you with every breath I take, and to be by your side through every joy and every hardship." "This ring," he said, slipping it onto her finger, "is not just a symbol of wealth. It's a token of my everlasting love for you." Tears welled in Adele's eyes as she stared at the ring, at the man kneeling before her. She had never imagined her life would turn out this way, never imagined that she would find someone like Cairo, someone who would love her so completely, so selflessly. She bent down, kissing him gently on the lips, her heart full as she whispered, "I love you, Cairo. I always have." And in that moment, Cairo knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together, united by a love that transcended all else. Their journey was only beginning. A pale light filtered through linen curtains, painting Adele's face in soft silver as she stirred from a sleep that had been both restless and vivid. The gentle rustle of leaves outside and the distant crow of a rooster heralded morning in the countryside. Yet her mind was already crowded with memories of last night's confession. Cairo's vulnerability laid bare, the raw sincerity of his admission echoing like a prayer in her heart. He had chosen her, truly chosen her, and in doing so had upended every certainty she once held about their life together. Over the following day, Adele moved through the rose garden where Cairo knelt among blossoms, still trembling with dew. Their silent breakfast on the terrace bristled with unspoken promises as each glance became a vow. Yet fate intruded in the form of a letter bearing the Vaughn patriarch's seal, summoning Adele back to the estate for a decisive social gathering that threatened to tear her between past obligations and present devotion. When dusk fell, she stood at the threshold of their home, the summons burning in her pocket. Cairo emerged, sensing her turmoil, and vowed to accompany her. That promise marked the true beginning of their partnership. Two hearts resolved to face the burdens of old alliances together. The grand doors of the Vaughn estate loomed before them as Adele and Cairo arrived hand in hand. Morning mist clung to the marble columns, and the formal parterre gardens stretched out like painted tapestries in the soft dawn light. Adele's heart fluttered, not from fear, but from a fierce determination. She inhaled the scent of dew-laden roses and stepped onto the stone pathway, her chin held high. Inside, the great hall buzzed with aristocratic voices. Silken gowns brushed polished floors, and chandeliers shimmered overhead. Adele's adoptive mother, Lady Vaughn, intercepted them near the sweeping staircase. Her eyes, cold and calculating, flicked from Adele's simple linen gown to Cairo's countryside attire, then hovered on the discreet cufflinks at his wrists. Cairo's hand tightened around Adele's. He guided her through the circle of scandalized stares until he stood squarely before Lord Vaughn himself. The tension in the room coiled tight as Lord Vaughn's pale eyes bore into them. "You have brought this farmer here, Adele?" he asked, tone icy. Cairo bowed deeply, voice clear and unwavering. "Lord Vaughn, I stand by your daughter because she is the reason I wish to become a better man." A stunned hush followed. Then, as if released by an unseen signal, polite applause rippled through the crowd. Lady Vaughn's lips thinned, but even she could not fully conceal her grudging respect. That night, Adele and Cairo found solace in the moonlit gardens. Adele's hand found Cairo's, their fingers entwined like vows. "You were magnificent today," she whispered. Cairo brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Only because I stood with you." And in that silent exchange beneath the watching stars, they sealed a promise. The whispers of their past would never again overshadow the strength of their love. The sun dipped lower into the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the vast expanse of water. The soft lapping of the waves against the shore echoed like a melody that had been composed just for them. Cairo and Adele stood side by side, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in sync with the rhythm of the world around them. In this moment, the noise of the world fell away, leaving only the two of them and the quiet whisper of the sea. Their love had been forged through trials, through moments of uncertainty and growth, but it had always been destined to be. What started as an arrangement born from circumstance had evolved into something so much deeper. It had become a bond that was unshakable, built on trust, vulnerability, and unwavering devotion. Cairo turned toward Adele, his gaze softening as he took in the sight of her. She was more than he had ever dreamed of, more than any wealth, any power could have ever provided. She was his world, his everything. The woman who had taken his heart and made it hers, irrevocably and completely. "Are you happy?" Cairo asked, his voice barely above a whisper, though there was an intensity in it that spoke volumes. His blue eyes searched hers for the truth, for any hint of doubt, but there was nothing but love and certainty in Adele's gaze. "I am," she replied, her smile a radiant beam of warmth that seemed to light up the evening around them. "I've always been happy, Cairo, from the moment I chose you." His chest tightened at her words, and without thinking, he cupped her face in his hands, drawing her closer. The world faded away as their lips met, soft and tender at first, before deepening into a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through, everything they had become together. It was a kiss that promised forever. The kiss lingered, sweet and slow, the world around them falling away until there was nothing but the two of them, wrapped in a cocoon of love and certainty. Cairo pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers as he whispered the words that had been in his heart for so long. "You are my forever, Adele. You and me, this is just the beginning. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Adele's eyes sparkled with tears, tears of joy and love, and she nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "I will always choose you, Cairo. No matter what the world throws at us, we will be together. Always." As the final rays of the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the stars began to twinkle above them. It was as if the universe itself was bearing witness to their promise, their unbreakable bond. The wind shifted gently, as though in agreement with their vows. The days ahead were unknown, but in this moment, Cairo and Adele knew one thing for certain. They had found something far greater than riches, far greater than anything they could have ever imagined. They had found love, a love that transcended all boundaries, all expectations, and all obstacles. A love that had been tested and had emerged stronger than ever. They turned back to the water, side by side, hearts in perfect harmony, as the stars above shone brightly, guiding them into the future. The future they would share, hand in hand, forever. And so, their love story continued. Not defined by the luxuries of the world, but by the simple, profound connection they shared. A love that would last for eternity, a love that could never be broken.